I am fascinated by the origins of things, and the Dallas Cowboys really reimagined sports franchises and remade the NFL. And wait until you hear where those Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders came from. Burk Murchison was there at the founding. His father, Clint, was the first owner and visionary of the Cowboys. This is an origin story you don't want to miss, all on this edition of the Arroyo Grande Show. Come on. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Welcome to Arroyo Grande. Go subscribe to the show now. Turn those notifications on so you know what's coming. And we'd so appreciate it if you like it so others can enjoy the show as well. And go to RaymondArroyo.com if you'd like to support our work. Now to our deep dive. They are known as America's team, but the founding of the Dallas Cowboys and the construction of Texas Stadium really set the path for all NFL franchises. Clint Murchison Jr. was the team's first owner and their visionary. I sat down with his son, Burk Murchison, recently in Dallas to talk about his dad's vision, his book, Hole in the Roof, the Dallas Cowboys, Clint Murchison Jr., and the stadium that changed American sports forever, and the origins of those famous Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Something incredible happens in 1967 when a stripper named Bubbles Cash comes from the upper tier of the Texas Stadium and saunters down, and she electrifies the stadium. How did that lead to the evolution of the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders?
Well, you know, it was so interesting because she at the time was vying to be kind of the stripper to be in Dallas, Texas, and she was competing with a lady named Candy Bar.
Clever.
And so she thought this would be a great forum to kind of show her talent off.
Oh yeah,
and she comes sashaying down. She got the mini skirt, the leopard spotted mini skirt, and cotton candy and all this coming down, this hair going everywhere, you know, big hair. It's just phenomenal. But everybody in the crowd went nuts in the stadium, immediately around her and everywhere, even to the point that Don Meredith and the team in the huddle suddenly heard all this, and they just broke huddle and looked up, see what was, it's just complete.
They thought there was a riot up in the stadium.
Total distraction.
Wow.
And afterwards, you know, I think it was just it showed up in the papers and was highly commented on. And then afterwards, later in the week, Tex Schramm, who kind of decided he has, you know, came up with all the good ideas the Cowboys ever did, but
the general manager,
but he met with Mitch Lewis, who was a PR person that knew, good friend of Dad's, who did a lot of work for the Cowboys, and they would have a drink periodically together. And the next time they got together, Mitch said, "Look, this is the missing ingredient for your cheerleaders." You know, because they kind of fumbled around with cheerleaders. They used high school cheerleaders, and they were just they were just nothing like you see in college. They were just kind of ignored. And we got to do more. And so sex sells, and so they began working kind of in that direction. They added some cheerleaders, not the current version, but they did some. Trying to find some models, but it wasn't just looks. It was more. There needed to be some kind of acting going on,
sex appeal, and a floor show.
Yeah, a floor show going on,
and that's what.
And then by the time in '73, leading up to that, Tex realized that, and I think he was a very bright man. He gave it a lot of thought. He actually recruited theater choreographer from theater to head it up, and in the process. So they added the dance portion, and those kind of routines with the high kicking and all that kind of stuff.
And the shimmies and shakes.
Well, and then Tex said, "Well, we need a uniform for these people." And it turns out he was friends with a ladies' dress owner shop in Crescent Royal Village, which is right near
in town.
And went to this man and goes, "We need to design it. Do you have somebody?" And so one of his suppliers, there was a tailor, a lady, with one of his suppliers, Paula Van Wagner.
Oh my gosh!
You know, and they asked
she designed that classic outfit.
Said she sat down. Her boss came to her and said, "We need a uniform." And she said she took about 3 hours.
Short shorts and
Short shorts.
low
yeah,
cleavage.
What do you call these boots?
High boots.
High boots and all that, and the colors. And presented in that uniform. And she actually went to the Smithsonian a couple of years ago. And they have
Well, reading your book, I could not believe that the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders really were inspired by a pair of strippers coming down the aisle at a game.
essentially.
Okay, well,
It's
you
great.
learn something new every day.
That's right.
Tell me, first of all, how your dad, Clint Murchison Jr., founded America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. How did this come to be?
You know, that's an interesting question. It's one I've given a lot of thought to, obviously, and it just became apparent that he, well, number one, he was a goal setter, and he always set goals growing up. And at some point, he must have just set one. I think he became infatuated with football. He was not a player and not really a true athlete. He was small and kind of puny as going through high school and things. But he played intramural football and things, and I think he just grew to love the game and started with college football. And I remember growing up in our family home, we'd have black and white TV on, and back then, as pre-Cowboys, there'd be the Chicago Bears. We fell in their kind of like region or something, and just boring as hell. But Dad would always have the game on, and it was just something that he focused on, and it became something that he wanted to act on. And he was a goal setter, which is really incredible.
And he wanted to bring the team to Dallas.
He wanted to bring to Dallas, yes, very definitely. Have one that was successful. He was around. He had moved back to Dallas with my mother and older brother in the late 40s after World War II. And at that point, college football was big. There's Doak Walker at SMU. Cotton Bowl was around. And then the Texans, there was a franchise, kind of an unknown, unheard of franchise, the Dallas Texans. It was founded in 1952 by a group of business people. And that was a miserable failure. They were undercapitalized and didn't even make it to the season. And Burt Bell, the commissioner then, that was prior to Pete Rozelle, but Burt Bell was commissioner then, ended up taking over the team. They finished up the season playing at away games. They ceased playing at home
because they couldn't get people to turn up at home.
Nobody. Well, and that was. I mean, Dallas at that point was a high school and college town rather than pro football. But Dad saw all this going on, and actually wanted to. He bought for that season. He bought 20 season tickets himself.
He was probably the only one in the stands.
Just like desperate.
But then in the late 50s, I was amazed as I read your book, A Hole in the Roof, which is about the building of the stadium, which I'm going to get to in a minute.
Yep.
The vision he had to bring a pro team to Dallas, and he was obsessed with this idea. So the late 50s, he tries to launch the Cowboys, and the owner of the Redskins.
Yeah, well, this is in '59 is when he actually acquired the franchise.
Okay.
Their opening season was in 1960, but the behind the scenes, the acquisition of the franchise occurred in '59.
Okay.
And at that point, it was there was no. I think the Redskins were the only team south of the Mason-Dixon line. And George Preston Marshall, the owner of that team, he had bought something. They'd been in Boston. They moved into D.C., changed the name, became the Redskins.
Right.
And he had a series of radio stations that ran through the southeast and kind of towards the southwest. And he decided everything south of the Mason-Dixon line was his
territory.
Yeah, and so he didn't want the Cowboys, and so Dad was concerned. I think they could have one veto. You could have one team veto, but you couldn't have two. And he was concerned that somehow he would get some traction and recruit another owner to vote against the expansion franchise. Right. And so Dad was working to. It took certain means to convince him to come on to vote in favor of the franchise itself.
Well,
and that led to that.
Let's tell people, your father, Clint Murchison, does something kind of unique here. He comes across, was it an ex-wife of the owner of the Redskins?
Yeah, and she was a silent movie star, and they've been married like 20 some odd years, and just at the timing of this, she apparently wrote the lyrics for the Redskins song. And Barney Briskin was the band manager. I mean, this kind of entertainment, halftime entertainment, that's what George Preston Marshall just loved this. He loved this more than fielding a winning team. It was really it was a bizarre man.
But he was obsessed with this song, the Smart song.
Yeah, the Smart.
And the lyrics that went with it.
Yeah, and so what they did, they approached a friend of Dad's who was a lobbyist, Tom Webb. And somehow he knew Barney or something. They approached him and said, "Look, can you buy this from us?" And she joined him. And so they bought the lyrics and the song, the music for this.
Okay.
And then there was and then at some point, as they were meeting down in Miami for the vote and stuff, and Dad called George Preston Marshall and said, to begin a discussion. And it came clear during the discussion that Dad owed those rights, and if George wanted to maintain the ownership or regain it, he's going to have to vote for the Cowboys. And it just led to kind of a sad but funny kind of series of events that followed in the years that followed in terms of pranks that Dad would play with. Because it was just a shame. It seemed like Marshall was just somewhat clueless. His ex-wife referred to him as the Marshall without a plan, which I thought was really great.
But I love that the Cowboys were basically founded by holding a song hostage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how it happened.
Right.
And without that, they may never have been.
It was a different time, and expansion was a new thing for the NFL. They'd failed less than 10 years before in Dallas.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot on the line here, and
why were the people in Dallas, the city council, the people, the planners, the officials, why were they so hostile, reluctant to adopt your father's idea of not only bringing the team to town, but more importantly, he wanted to have an arts and sports complex downtown? Well, they didn't like that.
They didn't oppose his founding a team in Dallas, as long as they played at the Cotton Bowl. And to see the Cotton Bowl, Fair Park was the site. It was built, the stadium pre-existed that, but in '36 they had the bicentennial, Texas bicentennial, and it was at Fair Park, which was, had been around.
Right.
But a lot of things were built for that. And over time, the entertainment, the museums, several art museums, the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, the Aquarium, they all just kind of gravitated down there. And that became kind of the hub of cultural and sports activity down there. But what happened is that over time, with the changes in movement of population stuff, that it kind of died out.
But your dad did not care for the Cotton Bowl. That's where the Dallas Cowboys had their opening seasons. What was the problem with it?
It was just an aging, out-of-date thing that had fallen in disrepair, that it had been built and added to in the late 40s when Doak Walker was such a phenomenon. They added upper decks, but it was never well maintained or kept by the city. And Dad just thought, and it was in an area town. There was deficient parking within walking distance of the stadium.
Right.
You had to park in people's yards in the surrounding neighborhood, all sorts of stuff.
And so your dad wanted to build a new stadium.
Very definitely.
And the place became Irving, Texas. Why there?
Well, he had wanted, over the time, when he first started, this idea of acting on this idea of building a stadium, he kind of looked down at Fair Park just to replace the Cotton Bowl with a new, maybe even smaller stadium. But he was looking down there, and mainly because he didn't think that there was real estate affordable to place the stadium elsewhere. And as he did research, and as he got involved, they were involved. Murchison Brothers, his partnership with his brother, was involved with some downtown buildings and whatnot, construction and whatnot down on the western end of town. And as he kind of just, was out there and learning more, he realized that there was properties down there that were affordable that you could actually build a stadium on.
He was really an innovator. I mean, tell us where this vision came from. What was his concept for what became Texas Stadium?
Well, he was a perfectionist, and he was a visionary, and it was interesting. And he had this in mind from the time the Cowboys were founded. This stadium thing was in the back of his mind, because I know when he went to all the away games, and when he made a point of sitting down with the crowd, not in the owner's box, but he wanted to sit down with the crowd and get a sense of the stadium, the pros and cons of it, and he was like building
in his head,
building ideas as to what would work and didn't work, and he was all about pleasing the spectator and providing as good a experience for the spectator as possible.
Well, tell me how big an influence the Astrodome was in his mind.
I think it opened his eyes to the possibility. He was moving ahead with his own plans when that happened, and there were things about it. I mean, he saw that. That it showed that it was possible. A couple of things that, again, these were kind of, in this case, it was kind of a criticism. It didn't allow, because it was totally domed and covered.
Yep.
It didn't allow the elements to be involved in all. He thought that was a mistake, and he also was in favor of a single-purpose stadium.
Just
football, baseball. That one is combined it, and they had to move stands around.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you get compromised in terms of your seating and the experience of the spectator.
Why the hole in the roof, which became the defining mark of the Texas Stadium?
That was to allow the elements to be involved. And I think, bottom line, I think deep down he wanted that, like, natural grass on the field, and they couldn't.
They couldn't do it.
They didn't, I don't know if you realize, but in Phoenix, they had natural grass, but they actually moved the whole field outside the dome.
So it could grow.
Yes, when the games aren't played, and then they move it back in.
I did not know
It
that.
is bizarre. And they spent a ton of money doing that. So he didn't go to that extreme, and so they did have natural turf.
But the luxury suites, the sponsorships, all of that is your father, Clint Murchison's innovation.
Oh yeah, the way it was financed, that's very interesting, because when he first, he was shunned by Dallas, and he knew that he always held out hope that he would be able to do a downtown stadium, and he just, he optioned 50 acres of property down on the south, kind of the southwestern sector of Dallas.
Really?
In order as a starting point for all this kind of stuff. So he did that. But he knew he needed to have an option. And so he reached out, he kind of looked at Arlington, which is where AT&T Stadium is now located. Yep. And Dallas was a different place, Dallas-Fort Worth, a different place. And he says, I just can't ask my fans to drive all the way out there for that. And because there was a stadium out there, or there was property available. And so it was through a friend, Max Thomas, who was a Dallas business guy that was a friend of Dad's, but was from Irving. And it was Max and some other locals that actually introduced Dad to the mayor out there, Lynn Brown was his name. He was an incumbent mayor, 5 terms or something. And that's a story. But it was Max also helped him locate the property. There was 85-acre teardrop shaped property that Dad ended up identifying and optioning and ultimately purchasing.
Tell me how Texas Stadium really becomes the prototype for all the NFL stadiums we've seen since then.
Well, you just look at where it's located. They call it's like the confluence of 3 freeways, and it's surrounded. There's plenty of parking. It's accessible. And then in terms of the experience, so the parking was a big deal, because that was the problem out here at the Cotton Bowl. So he really focused on parking. And then in terms of the stadium, he wanted to do chair-back seats, because we had out here
benches
out here at the Cotton Bowl. So everything he was trying to counter with the Cotton Bowl and make it even more appealing to the fan in terms of their acceptance.
And the corporate sponsorship. I mean, he coined this idea of attaching corporate sponsorship
Well, that was
to the
actually
franchise.
that came later a little bit. I think the sponsor, I think what you may be thinking about are the Circle Suites or Luxury Suite.
Yeah.
There were 2 levels of those. That there had been. In certain cases, in other stadiums, there was a suite or 2, but nothing on a commercial scale. And he actually had 2 levels between the top and bottom decks, 2 levels, 178 suites, priced at, and he ended up, he didn't know how to price these things. Nobody knew what people do, but he priced it at $50,000 unfinished shell space. And so people would buy them and then come in with their decorated and finish them out of the well. So you had 178 different designs. It was fascinating.
Wow.
And there was one like incredible, a photo is in the book. It's Louis XIV style. I don't know if you saw that. I wish
chandeliers and
we were hoping to do it in color, but it had like dark blue carpeting and stuff. I mean, it was outrageous, but I mean, it was that the kind of creativity you saw, and it caught people's imagination, and it took the whole experience to another level.
How did he find Tom Landry?
That's
Landry.
That's interesting because his first hire was Tex Schramm, the general manager, who came out of the Los Angeles Ram organization, and he had had the help George Hallis of the Chicago Bears, very helpful to him. He had helped him identify Tex Schramm.
Oh, Tex Schramm.
And then Tex, basically in his own mind, he had hired and worked with Sid Gilman, who was another coach, who went on after the new league came into being, the AFL came into being, went on to coach San Diego Chargers. Very good coach, experienced coach, had coached Rams and the Chargers, but Dad, he got word from friends that, Alicia Landry, Tom's wife, was from Dallas. And they would come back. He'd coach in their season up for New York. He was a player coach and then defensive coach. And so he was, highly recommended. And it was really Dad that really, is the one that made that selection as opposed to Tex. And Tex kind of did everything or took credit for everything. But in this case, Dad, it was interesting because I think Tom Landry was a genius.
Yep.
And Dad had a ton of respect for him. But they kind of thought the same because Tom undergraduate wise had gotten a degree in chemical engineering. Dad was an electrical engineer by education. And so they kind of thought the same. Wow. And that's a statement or observation that Joe Bailey, who worked for Tex Schramm, kind of made. He's still living, and we've talked about it. But it's really fascinating, I think. And it was really Dad that caused Tex to, that they worked together, and Dad, caused Tex. They ended up hiring Landry as the coach, and it's pretty incredible.
Tell me about from '66 for the next 20 years. The Dallas Cowboys have winning seasons.
Oh, it was incredible.
In that Texas stadium.
Yeah.
What was the magic there?
Well, it just, everything came together. Tom Landry was on had a plan, it's like a 5-year plan. And he didn't quite meet that because I think they ended up, they were set back. One of the setbacks is in the first year, they weren't able to participate in the draft. And so they were just, they were signing a few free agents like Don Meredith and there was a good running back, Don Perkins. And so they had that, but they didn't. And so it kind of set him back. But by '66 is when they won and they played the great Green Bay Packers in the Cotton Bowl in a fabulous game. One of the best games I've ever been to. And it was pre-Berger. So it was like, what's interesting also is that had we won that game, so we beat, we lost to Green Bay. Green Bay went on and played the Kansas City Chiefs in the first Super Bowl. But had we won that, we would have been
in that first,
and we would have been matched up against the Dallas Texans, who were founded the same year the Cowboys were, and we. Competed, Dad and the team competed not on the field, but commercially for 3 or 4 years before Lamar Hunt decided to move them to Kansas City. But we would have played them in the first Super Bowl. It's just been a phenomenal thing. And also, if you think about it, had we lost that game, we should have won that game, frankly. The next year was the Ice Bowl in Green Bay. We should have won that game, lost that. But had we won those two championship games, it would probably be the Landry Trophy rather than the Lombardi Trophy.
Wow.
I mean, you think of it. I mean, things turned on just 2 games in terms of that. Because Landry's success from starting at 66, through the time Dad sold the team after the 83 season. I think that's 18 years, winning record, playoffs every year, 5 Super Bowls, and two victories in the Super Bowl championship.
Incredible.
In that period of time. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Has your father's vision, I mean, your dad coined and created what we know of now as the modern day NFL stadium.
Right.
Has his vision been perverted in your mind?
Well, I think a little bit. It just depends on what these owners want. And I recall when, they were, Jerry Jones, rather than renovate and do things at Texas Stadium, he chose to move them to a new venue. He wanted to start over. His vision was entirely different. And Dad was all about the experience of the spectator, sightlines, access, comfort, all that kind of stuff. Jerry Jones, his mantra was more, and he actually had a T-shirt out, is bigger is better. So they had the outline of AT&T Stadium overreaching the outline of Texas Stadium on the graphics, on the shirt stuff. And really, I mean, and so he's all, I mean, and what he's always, kind of commented on is he's all about the money. And he ended up with a stadium with 80,000, capacity of 80,000 spectators seated, another 20, there's standing room for another 20.
Wow.
And it was just a different priority, really. And Dad was about the experience. Jones was more about just packing as many people we can in there.
When Jerry Jones bought the team, he bought the lease to the Texas Stadium, and people laughed at him. Why was that a good idea?
It was a good idea because it had a profit potential that he identified. And people didn't realize that, but what it took is the need, what you were able, in order to, make that, take advantage of that, you had to have a winning team. You had to pull people in. And Jimmy Johnson was able to turn that team around with just a matter of like 3 years. They went back to the Super Bowl, and the excitement that caused in the community, and it's just a surge of interest in buying the ticket. It's just a long story, but then they were able to take advantage, add new suites, sell these luxury suites, and it just ended up being just the commercial success followed the success on the field.
When the Texas Stadium finally came down, they tore it down. There were 3 buttresses still standing. What did that mean to you?
Oh, that's interesting. People have said had different ideas about that. Somebody said they kind of symbolized what Landry, Schramm, and Gil Brandt maybe, or something, or Dad. I don't know. Yeah. They're just but it was that was an emotional day.
I'll bet.
And but it was it's something that and what's interesting there is that occurred in 2010 after the Cowboys had moved to AT&T a year later in the spring, a year later, but that had been negotiated way back in early 2000s when the Cowboys had made a decision that they were going to leave Texas Stadium and relocate in Arlington. And that was something that came down between a negotiation between Herbert Gears, the mayor at the time of Irving, and Jerry Jones. And he, Jones's big negotiating point was he wanted the stadium torn down, demolished, because moving to the new stadium, he didn't want any competition for college games, high school, non-Cowboy stuff.
He wanted it all there.
So Irving got things in return, monetarily and stuff that they negotiated for, but ended up, so that decision happened almost, way before the move itself to the new stadium.
Well, they've had a string of bad luck, though, since they moved to that new house. Maybe they should have stayed in Texas Stadium a little longer. I mean, the good luck charm is clearly there. I mean...
Well, so much, it just, it's management style and things. And I don't know how much you want to get into that, but Dad was a hands-off kind of guy. You know, he hired the people, he hired the best,
And let them run.
Let them run it, and just stood. But he was in Tex. At some point, referred to him as the glue that kept our operation, the organization together, which is true because he was always there to support them and back them up when they were challenged for one reason or another.
What did your dad have that you don't see in these NFL franchises today? And what do you think he'd think watching this, seeing this, and the way that his team has evolved?
Oh, he remained a Cowboy fan throughout. I mean, after he sold, I remember going back. He was in bad shape physically and whatnot, health-wise. But I remember visiting him in he had kind of a sitting room office sitting room we'd watch and sit, and he'd watch all the games. He'd be there, and I don't know. I think there would be. He was so. I mean, I'm sure he's proud about what he did. He was proud about the honor it brought to Dallas, turning the team around, and not turning the team, but getting established and making it a winner and things like that. So I guess, I mean, it'd be hard to say. I would assume he'd be disappointed. And
why?
Well, I mean, I just think I think if you can follow his model, and if you find the right people, I think it can bring the stability that you can find success. And I think they just kind of, gotten off the path, kind of. And really the model that Jerry Jones uses now in terms of the, owner, management, coach, is more like it's an outmoded model. The last person to use it was at Oakland. He was the owner, GM
of the Oakland Raiders.
Al Davis. And when Jones was just first getting started, Al was still around, and Jones really they bonded, and I think he picked up a lot of his. Somehow he appreciated his philosophy and wanted to kind of he became a little bit his role model.
Very hands-on.
Very hands-on, and to an excess, really. And particularly when it just got so complicated. I mean, when you look at managing anything is tough, particularly, and there's so much competition. I mean, you got to be, and Jones is a really bright guy, but I mean, it's just, I think you need to find people with specialized talent.
And trust them to do their job.
Trust them. And he just kind of has floundered there. And I'm not sure why. It's a tragedy that it's occurred.
There's something I ask every guest on Arroyo Grande. I have a questionnaire. Rapid fire questions. You don't have to think deeply about these. Who's the person you most admire?
My wife.
Why?
Oh, she's solid as a rock. And
I would agree with that. I know his wife. Elise is fantastic. Who's the person you most detest?
Oh my gosh. There's a Satan. How's that?
Oh, Satan. I guess that counts. What's your best feature?
My best feature? I think I have a pretty good sense of humor.
You do have a good sense of humor. What do you fear?
I just fear change with respect to our country and the stability of our country and what the world that's being introduced to our children and grandchildren.
What is the thing you know that no one else does?
That I know?
Yeah.
Oh, I think maybe probably just internally, like the lack of self-confidence.
Wow. What's the best advice you ever received?
Oh, there's one that comes out of this. I didn't use it in the book, but I've learned it since, and that's in terms of goal setting.
Yeah.
And a plan without a goal without a plan is just a dream. So,
boy, is that true. If you could not do what you're doing now, what would you do?
Oh, what I'm doing now? I'd be on the beach. No, I love fishing. I love the Bahamas. We talked about the Bahamas.
Yeah.
I love fishing. I love just being out in the water with the people.
What happens when this is over?
What's this now?
Well, whatever you want it to be. Could be this interview, could be this life. I don't know. That's up to you.
Well, hopefully I end up with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
That's a perfect answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Burk, thank you so much.
Yeah.
What a joy.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, here's the whole. I love how Burk's dad, Clint Murchison, he was undeterred in trying to establish his team in Dallas. He tried to buy franchises in other cities, but none of them would sell. So the decisive moment was, and I hope you picked up on it, it was his decision to buy the Washington Redskins fight song, which he basically held as a ransom against George Preston Marshall, the owner of the Redskins. Sometimes to get what you need, you have to consider what your competitor values most. Smart move, Clint. And it's the reason why the Cowboys, by the way, ended up having the team in Dallas. But did you know they were almost called the Dallas Steers? At the last minute, Murchison changed the name to the Dallas Cowboys. He's up for consideration to be included in the Football Hall of Fame. How Clint Murchison has been overlooked all this time is a mystery to me. Let's hope they fix it this year. We'll keep you posted. I hope you'll come back to Arroyo Grande soon. Why live a dry, constricted life when if you fill it with good things, it can flow into a broad, thriving Arroyo Grande? I'm Raymond Arroyo. Make sure you subscribe, like this episode. Thanks for diving in, and we'll see you next time. Arroyo Grande is produced in partnership with iHeart Podcasts and DP Studios and is available on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.